In this video, I'm comparing the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III to the Sony Xperia Pro-I. Now, you Sony fans will know the Sony Xperia Pro-I has that massive 1-inch image sensor. They call it the 1.0 image sensor. So that is a big differentiating factor between these two devices. There are, of course, some other hardware differences, and I'm making this video so that we can see how that comes into play when it comes to photography. And also, I'm not convinced there's going to be a massive difference, so I am going to throw in a few surprises as we get through this video, and I will be changing locations a few times as well. I might head down the old East End of London a little bit later on in the video for a couple of beers. All right, you ready to take some photos? Let's go.
A small demonstration will now take
Since it's spring, why not start this off with a classic flower shot? What's interesting to me is the fact that I manually dialed in the exact same settings on both devices, but the images do appear to be a little bit different when it comes to white balance and overall color saturation. And if we zoom in 200% on one of the petals, you can really see that the better quality image sensor is delivering better results. And the reason I say a better quality sensor and not just a bigger sensor, because it is 1 inch, is because of the way the camera module and lens tech works. Essentially, it's only using a 12 megapixel cropped part of that sensor, but the actual sensor itself was designed for a compact camera. It is a Sony CMOS sensor and not an IMX, which was designed for smartphones. So to put it simply, it is a better quality image sensor. Now, when you check out these next two photos, keep that in mind, and also keep it in mind that all of the photos in this video on the Xperias have been shot in manual mode using the Photo Pro app. And most of the photos at the beginning of this video were shot in the JPEG format with auto HDR on. And don't forget to let me know in the comments below the differences you notice in the image quality between these two, and I will zoom in 200% on each one so you can get a closer look and a better idea of what's going on here. Okay, so now you've got a good idea of the difference that the Sony 1.0 type CMOS image sensor makes. And now let me show you what the variable aperture feature that the Xperia Pro-I has can do. The Xperia Pro-I can physically switch between f2.0 aperture, which allows more light in, and f4.0, which closes the iris a little bit so that more can be in focus, and it does kind of restrict the light a little more as well. The Xperia 1 Mark III's main camera is locked at f1.7. Anyway, check this out. Even with auto HDR on, the background behind the dog is overexposed in the Xperia 1 Mark III's photo. And both phones are using the same shutter speed, same ISO, same white balance, but the difference here is that aperture. The Xperia Pro-I has the ability to stop down to f4.0, which has allowed it to handle the brightness better and keep more in focus. And that, combined with the better quality image sensor, has delivered a better and more accurate image overall. However, this was shot in manual, and looking at it now, I wish I had nudged the ISO up just a little bit, or maybe slowed the shutter speed down a little bit. But the problem is the dog's always moving, so I had to use a fast shutter speed. Otherwise the dog might have been quite blurry in the picture. Okay, this one is interesting. These are the Sony Link Buds. Only Sony could come up with something as random as earbuds with a hole in the middle. But that's not what I want to show you here. It's the colors, the sharpness, and the detail. Check this out. Both phones are using the exact same manual settings in the Photo Pro app, and what you'll notice here when you look at this closely is the difference in color saturation, the sharpness around the lettering, and this keyboard cover, if you're wondering, is from Creators Keys. They make these awesome keyboard covers for various computers and various editing software. If you do any kind of video editing, you should definitely check them out. Now, if you're an Xperia 1 Mark III owner, I don't want you to feel like you've got an inferior product, because let's not forget the Xperia 1 Mark III does have wireless charging, the Pro-I doesn't, and the Xperia 1 Mark III has a zoom lens that can physically shift from 70mm focal length to 105mm focal length, and I'm about to show you that in action. And just to spice this camera showdown up a little bit, let's bring in the notorious iPhone 13 Pro Max. Here is the ultra wide. Now let's zoom in 400% on that crane, and detail wise they're all very similar, and that shouldn't be much of a surprise because Apple do use Sony sensors in their phones. Here's the telephoto. Now this is where the Xperia 1 Mark III should dominate, and this is because of the quality of the lenses and that unique shifting lens tech that it has. But now check this out, this is the 105 focal length. Essentially what you're getting here on Xperia 1 Mark III is that kind of lossless zoom. Because it's not being digitally enhanced, it's a mechanical shifting element inside the camera unit, and honestly it's really quite impressive. And do you know what else would be impressive? A sub and a like on this video. Check this one out. This one's for the big haters who watch this channel. So now what I'm going to do is just roll a few more photos for you guys, and then we'll get into the night shots where I shot manually and in RAW, so you'll see a bit more of the potential of the Xperia Pro-I. Okay, I just want to pause on this picture because this is a prime example of where camera AI can go horribly wrong. This sweet shop in Camden Market Stables is full of tungsten bowls which give off a very strong hue, and the owner has done this purposely so you get that kind of warm vibe in the shop. And I spent a good bit of time dialing in the white balance manually on the Xperias to match exactly what I could see with my eyes, and you are seeing a true to life representation, in my opinion, in those photos. The iPhone's AI, however, has gone overkill on trying to compensate for that orange light, and as a result it's destroyed the atmosphere that the shopkeeper intended. So this is what I'm talking about. Sometimes man is still better than machine when it comes to smartphone photography. And here's night picture one. So it was just me, a tripod and the 3 phones. And I must admit it was difficult to take these photos. I had to dial in the settings manually on the Sonys with no focal point to measure the exposure from, and then I had to set a timer and then run into the frame, and luckily it turned out alright. Now in this one I didn't do any enhancements after the fact on the Xperia Pro-I image, even though it's shot in RAW, because it just came out really nicely on its own. And I think you'll agree there is a clear winner here, and I'm quite surprised to see the iPhone's image is quite blurry even though it was on a tripod. Are you surprised? Let me know in the comments below. Now in this image there were some lights in the shot. Now here's one with very little light, and it's in scenarios like this where the machines can often win. The Xperia Pro-I RAW did look originally like this. I have enhanced it in post using Lightroom, but realized after the fact that actually I shot this in way too high of an ISO. That's why we're getting all that kind of graininess in the night sky. A longer exposure would have been better. However, I should mention the most realistic image here out of the 3 is quite possibly the Xperia 1 Mark III, because it really was that dark. And in this one, again, you can see the advantages that AI has over my mediocre photography skills. Again, I probably should have used a longer exposure, a lower ISO, and that would have delivered a better result. I think one thing that could help improve the Sony Xperia's night mode, especially with this bigger image sensor, would be a gimbal stabilization system, because if you don't have a tripod you can't really do a long exposure unless there's some kind of AI magic happening. But if you've watched this far into the video, you are truly a Sony fan, and you know Sony want you to work for it. They don't want it to be easy. They want you to shoot like a professional photographer with this phone. So you probably should get yourself a tripod. But with that said, this next one is truly going to blow your mind. Okay, so here's a question for you. Which one of these do you think captured the most realistic and most detailed moment in time here? I'm guessing your eyes are being drawn to the iPhone 13 Pro Max photo, and on the surface of things it does appear to be the best, but look what happens when we turn up the exposure on all three images. Now, I'm not saying the Sony Xperia photos are perfect, and that's probably my fault for not dialing in the correct settings, but I wanted to show you this anyway, because I want you to see the potential that these phones do have if you use them the correct way. Anyway, I hope this video has been as much as an eye-opener for you as it has been for me. I wasn't sure about the results, that's why I brought the iPhone in midway through. And I will be working on more Xperia Pro-I content in the future, so make sure you're subscribed with the notifications on for that when it goes live. I'd love to hear your ideas on what content you think I should make. And if you just subscribed, you're now one of the finest subscribers known to man, and I will see you in the next one, so don't be late.